I know we're doing PM peak, but I got to tell you, being a neighbor of Sahali Way, which I use regularly, just like you use the Parkway, there is a definite AM peak on that thing that is more severe than PM peak.
Yeah, and that is actually becoming more common. It's a policy decision. It would take an investment. The reason, I think that's a question that's going to pop up somewhere, but why did AM peak go away? We can talk about that. The city has a PM peak travel demand model. Most of the research for small scale models that cities like Sammamish use, we have a lot of good trip generating data for PM peak, not as much for AM. So, and there was we talked about, well, what would the budget be to create an AM model? Because if you want to have an AM level of service, we need to figure out how to predict AM volumes in the future.
Have we not measured it by hour?
Measuring and predicting are two different things. So I can tell you what it is all day long. Right now, we have the AM. But if you want me to tell you, does it get worse in the future or by how much, I need a predictive tool, which you don't have. So that would be another policy decision. Do you want to spend the money to create an AM model so that all you can do right now is, which you have the ability to do, is measure AM level of service. I think Public Works has that. But if you want to predict it, we need to modify the traffic model to be able to do an AM forecast.
But Victor, we had the AM model until just less than 5 years ago, I think, wasn't it?
No, you never. Actually, that's the reason we took it out, is you were operating without an AM model, so we decided to eliminate the language that you weren't doing that. There was not an AM predictive model, so we were only looking at PM. There was a comp plan policy that said AM or PM, that whichever was worse, and since we weren't doing AM and there was not a desire to invest in building an AM model, it was changed to PM only. In general, that gives you the right project list. But it is a policy decision. If you wanted to look at, the segments wouldn't change, because again, that's a daily number, but the intersection delays, we could begin to forecast future intersection delays and tell you, we can certainly tell you what they are now compared to PM. But again, we'd need an expansion of the model to predict them for the future, because that's how we do a concurrency test. We put land use into the model and it predicts traffic accounts, which we're almost there. It's the next slide, so we'll talk about how we model and what we do and don't model.
Kathy. Councilmember, or excuse me, Deputy Mayor Malchow.
The AM PM thing, I wanted to just bring one thing that was troubling me, is that we were only counting the PM peak because that's the model we had, correct? But that wasn't what the policy was. The policy stated AM or PM, whichever was greater. And while it may never have been the intention to capture the AM, the fact is that that was the policy. And so that was kind of a breach of policy, frankly, that we never looked at the AM policy. It was in there. We were supposed to. We didn't have the model, but we should have had the model. And the other thing was that came up last night too, was the Monday, Tuesday, Wednesday, Thursday, Friday. But that wasn't the policy. The policy was Tuesday, Wednesday, Thursday. But we counted Monday, Tuesday, Wednesday, Thursday, Friday. Inconsistencies again that we need to close the loop on.
And as far as the switch from AM to PM, the correction was made in 2015 to acknowledge, yes, we do have a policy that says we should look at both. We are not. So the consistency was created back then. So we're square today. If you want to go back and reinstate that, that's this next step. But as of now, we recognized that several years ago and corrected it because we didn't feel the resources to address that issue were important. Now that appears to be different.
I just wanted to make a few comments because we went through, I think, what was a very valuable and important exercise last week with talking about concurrency. And this is directly related to that subject matter. So to that end, it was very timely. Last week, I raised two issues of council-directed policies that were not carried out by staff. And I have some severe concerns with those. And I just want to highlight those again. One was the AM/PM peak. And the original language said whichever was worse. That was changed in the 2015 comp plan. But it was noted during our conversation that the reason we never did the AM model was that we never did AM was because we didn't have a model for it. But that wasn't the policy. The policy was AM/PM or whichever was worse. And I think it probably should have been highlighted to a previous council before it was altered in 2015 that we didn't have a model. The other one that I find concerning that's relevant currently is the fact that we are using Monday through Friday for the average weekly daily traffic. And that is not current policy. Current policy is Tuesday, Wednesday, Thursday. And I suspect that Friday have low volumes. To quote my favorite traffic guy, Chris Sullivan, we have Friday light. So I suspect that using Friday in our traffic counts actually drives down the numbers. So I'm concerned about it from the perspective that policy is not being followed, and I don't think that that is an option staff should be exercising. And if the balance of the council is not equally concerned about that, then I have some further concerns. This is the #1 issue in the city. It was highlighted again and again last night by every single council candidate. I hear about it on a daily basis. I hear about it from my own husband. So, there's so many questions that I have about this, and it's such an important subject matter. But I think allowing council to have an opportunity to change policy, that's what we're here for. And then when we create that policy, we have to follow through and make sure that it's carried out.
Thank you for your comments. Mr. City Manager, would you like to respond? There was some.
I appreciate the comments very much, and I will work with staff to address the implications of those.